FRC 90-90 hip internal rotation, isometrics and liftoffs. This functional range conditioning hip internal rotation mobility exercise is useful for improving the internal rotation of the hip and therefore increasing the range of motion, strength and power of the hips. Start in a 90-90 seated position with the front knee bent at 90 degrees and the shin parallel to the hips. The back knee is also bent at 90 degrees with the thigh parallel to the hips. The ability to sit in the 90-90 position with an upright torso depends on the mobility of the hips. If you are unable to sit up straight, you can lean out to one side with the supporting hand on the floor. In the 90-90 seated position, we place a heavy weight on the rear ankle. We aim to sit as upright as possible, place the hands firmly on the floor and lock the elbows. Breathing into the diaphragm and pushing the air down into the belly, we contract all of the muscles in the body as we continue to push the hands into the floor. From here, we contract the internal rotator muscles of the rear hip by pushing the knee into the floor and aiming to lift the rear foot off the floor. Try to think about the femur, the thigh bone, rotating inside the hip socket. The intention is to lift the rear foot off the floor, but the weight on the ankle will prevent this from happening. This is our isometric contraction. Perform the specified number of repetitions and hold the isometric contraction for the prescribed amount of time. After completing the isometrics, remove the weight from the rear foot. Again, sit in an upright position, place the hands firmly on the floor and lock the elbows. Breathing into the diaphragm and packing the air down into the belly, we contract all of the muscles in the body as we continue to push the hands into the floor. This time, we contract the internal rotator muscles of the rear hip by pushing the knee into the floor and aiming to lift the rear foot off the floor as high as possible. Try to think about the femur bone, the thigh bone, rotating inside the hip socket. This time, the foot will lift off the floor slightly. If you struggle to lift the foot, you can lean the torso forward slightly to offer less resistance. If you lift the foot a long way off the floor, make sure you are sitting with an upright torso. The aim of the lift-off is to build strength in the end range of motion, and hence we only really need to target the end range. Working through a greater range is not bad, but the mobility gains are specific to the end range. Perform the specific number of lift-offs and hold the end range contraction for the prescribed amount of time.